BioMario have asked me to come to talk about automation implementation. So at present, we are a BD Keystra customer, but we are going to move into second generation automation and refresh our BD Keystra with a WASP lab solution, so complete change. So I'm just going to give you a bit of background about why we implemented lab automation. It was way back in 2012. We all started talking about coming together as three trusts. We were three separate trusts and we were under a lot of financial pressure. The way that we thought we could do this is to introduce lab automation to get some economy of scale and get some cost savings. Everybody had looked at individual cost-saving programs across the three separate sites, separate labs, and we had basically exhausted every which way we could to save money. So we felt that consolidation was the way forward and what we should do to give the trusts some financial relief. So that involved transformational change. At Gateshead, we were very lucky to already have a BD Keystra inocular, so we'd had the first sort of part of Keystra installed in our Gateshead lab. We also had Brooker Multitoff Vitech too, so we were quite far ahead with automation. And we had a POS 720 plate labeler, which we got probably the mid-2000s and thought was the best thing ever because it got rid of marker pens, and we could print labels on our plates. And of course, at that time, there was also the political and the cultural considerations. So there was lots of reports coming out from the government about how we could achieve savings by consolidating pathology services. And that's what we did. So just to go through the national drivers of why pathology is being consolidated and continues to be consolidated today. So the population's increasing from 2023 by 5 million to 58 million. People over 75, people are living longer, so that's rising from 8% to 10% of the population. People over 85 are increasing as well, and the over 65-year-olds account for 68% of emergency bed days. 1 in 3 of the population also have long-term health conditions, and they account for half of all GP appointments. 64% of outpatient appointments, 70% of inpatient bed days, and 30% of the population account for 70% of the overall spend in pathology. So it's everybody's living longer and hopefully living longer and better lives, and it's putting a lot of pressure onto the healthcare system. So this is all data, but there's a funding gap in the NHS, which we all know about. We're all being asked to do more with less funding, and we all find it incredibly difficult in the laboratories. So a bit of background about where we are in Tyneside. So this is sort of the geographical area of Tyneside. We've got a population of around about 650,000 people. And we cover Gateshead, which is a 600-bed hospital. South Tyneside is slightly smaller, 300-bed hospital, and Sunderland is the largest of the three at a 900-bed hospital. At the point these slides were put together, we were 3 acute trusts, but actually Sunderland and South Tyneside have come together now. And so there's 2 acute trusts and 3 CCGs that have all come together. And also not to be underestimated is the cultural differences. We're quite close together geographically, but the difference between Sunderland supporters and Newcastle supporters is quite big. And this slide was put together by a colleague who's a Sunderland supporter, so that's why the Sunderland badge is in front of the Newcastle one. If it was me, it would be the other way around. So it really isn't to be underestimated. So back in 2012, and even before that, when Gateshead was standalone before we merged into 3 labs, we had this ethos that we were going to provide care for life, because pathology services go from before birth until into the mortuary. So it's care for life, but it's not just care for life, it's world-class care for life. So in Gateshead, and now as the south of Tyne and Wear pathology service, what we're doing is we're constantly improving our pathology services. We're looking for best practice, and we're trying to be as innovative as possible. So at the time that we came together, we did have a partnership with BD Keystra, but we did look at bioMérieux's equipment at that time, but bioMérieux's was more a joined up thinking approach with Myla and all the modular pieces of equipment. Our management at the time wanted to go for almost like a biochemistry tracked solution to try and get that automation in, like big bang with microbiology. So we went for Keystra. So the challenges when we opened the new laboratory in 2014 was that we had a new custom adapted facility. We had the old laundry site at Gateshead, which was basically fitted out for pathology. It was a blank canvas, it was totally empty when we moved in. We thought we had loads of space. If you're ever designing your own pathology lab and you're going from scratch, double the size of what you think you need, because you'll move in and you'll fill the space and then some, and you'll still need some more space. So make it bigger. We had all the new equipment. Everything that was put into the new pathology building was brand new. We hadn't touched it before. We had a whole Keystra track put in, and then we spent a manic weekend trucking everything from the old labs into the new facilities. One casualty was an anaerobic cabinet. It fell off the back of a lorry, and basically we had to get it replaced because it was broken. We had a new staffing structure, which I'll move on to talk about in a little while, but basically 3 labs were consolidated into one. We also had new IT infrastructure, so we had 3 different LIMS systems that we had to combine into one LIMS system, and we had to get all the interfacing sorted for all the new equipment, which, again, I'll move on to that, wasn't very successful. And then we had new processes. I'm sorry to all the medics in the room, but we had 8 or 9 consultant BMSs at that time, and we needed to get them all to agree on a standardised SOP, and that was like torture, trying to get them all to conform to do one process. Absolute nightmare. And we also had the new logistics. So because during the consolidation it was decided we didn't need a hot lab site at Sunderland and South Tyneside, all the samples had to get to Gateshead site in a reasonable time frame to allow urgent microbiology testing to be done. So lots of things going on in 2014. And then this is just some pictures of what the lab actually looks like. So what we wanted was a lab that was fit for purpose, both at the time and for the future. So we do say it a lot, but we did get a lot of state-of-the-art equipment, and it was very shiny and new. And we have a mezzanine level where we take people when they come to visit, and often people will come out and go, wow, it's amazing. But for us, it's like, oh, yeah, it's great, yeah. We've seen it. It was totally worn off for us. We are just like, yeah, this is the lab. And I think we forget how amazing our lab actually is. And then just some more pictures of it. Basically, that's the outside of it, the custom-built building. That's a view from the mezzanine level, so looking down, it is like pretty much like a big factory. We've just had our UCAS assessment, and our UCAS assessor said there's the potential for it to feel like a factory, but luckily the staff have made it such a nice place to work that you don't get that factory feeling when you walk in. It still feels like a microbiology lab. And that's biochemistry down at the other end. Little gripe, they got the windows. Microbiology didn't get the windows, so we were a bit upset about that. But is what it is, we'll not argue. And this is basically the floor plan of what the lab looks like. So the big box down on the right-hand side is BD Keystra, because Roche didn't know how to draw it, so they just put a box in. And this is our lab. So we take up quite a big footprint of the lab space. And that was amazing when we moved in. Empty space. We moved in, put all our equipment in, thought, yay, we've got loads of room. Excellent, we'll get on. So our workload, we're approaching about 1 million samples a year now. A lot of that is broken down there. I'm not going to go through every single one. But I didn't put a slide in about our urines, and I'm thinking I should have probably done that, because our urine samples we changed way back in 2012. We started to do microscopy to screen out negatives, so our negative urine samples that aren't indicative of any infection go out within a couple of hours, so that goes straight out to the GPs and the wards. Our positive urines then go on to be cultured using the mass jury, which gives us extended panel plus carbapenemase screening. So that's really been quite beneficial to the laboratory. And then, like I say, we've got a raft of other tests that we do. That's just a snapshot. CSF PCR was really beneficial as well. We snuck that in with COVID, so we got a biofire off the back of COVID testing, and then when nobody was looking, I basically just snuck CSF PCR in, so we don't have to send that off to Newcastle anymore, and the samples are done really quickly and returned to the paediatricians, and that's got a really positive impact. Had I had to write a business case for it, there's no way I would have got that in, so that, you know, COVID did have some benefits. So the BD Keystra, I've put happy smiley faces over the top of all of my staff because they're not always happy and smiley. But basically, this was the inocular, as I said, was installed in Gateshead in 2012, and then we picked that up. The inocular is the sort of bit in the bottom left where you do all your plate labelling and stuff. We picked that up and brought that down to the main new build. We had staff resistance, so obviously we had the 3 staff coming together from the 3 different sites. So we had to get everybody to like each other, for one, which was a struggle, and then get everybody to work together on brand new automation. Again, a struggle, and staff were really resistant. They didn't think that automation was the way forward. They thought that they could do the work without the automation, but I think now they totally accept that it's not possible to get through that volume of samples without some form of automation. So under the less good bits, we really had high hopes for interfacing, and it just didn't happen with BD Keystra. So we had hoped to go fully automated with our swabs, but we had issues with the liquid swab automation. The inocular that we have is a first generation, and we didn't get the refreshes of the systems that we expected to get. So basically, it couldn't do what we hoped. So we basically work in semi-automated mode, which is inoculating the plates and let a bead spread on one side, or just old-fashioned manual inoculation, where the scientists and the support workers are inoculating, popping the plates on the track, and they go off to the incubators. On there, one of the things is we have 5 incubators as well, so we have the ability to switch those incubators seasonally from CO2 to O2 depending on demand. So in the winter we knock another CO2 on to cope with all the sputum samples. It has 7 reading stations on the track. We have 4 offline reading stations, so there's a lot of capacity for reading, and the bottom track takes the plates to the incubators, and the top track brings the plates back to the scientists, so you don't have to get up and move around. And as I say, the IT integration just didn't work. So we had something called Screen Sync set up, but when we actually started using the Screen Sync between Meditech, which is our limbs, and the Keystra system, it was bringing up the wrong patient plate for the record. So we had to switch it off, and we never got any further with it. So no pressure by Ameria, but quite a bit of hope for the new system. Staffing numbers, so I've talked about we've combined across 3 sites, and there was no hot lab site on the other the trusts. So staff numbers were 83 whole-time equivalents when we all came together, and we were hoping to get to 69 within 36 months, and we do actually run at about 69 staff, whole-time equivalent staff. So that's a mix of staff, that's all the bands, so that's not just the scientific staff. Staff were offered redundancy packages when we came together. All the grades of staff basically slotted in because people took redundancy. Everybody slotted in to job posts, apart from the band 7s. There was one too many of us, so at that point I was a band 7, so we all had to re-interview, and I think it was the most horrific experience of my life. But yeah, we did that. And it also was really good because it allowed band 2s to progress up to band 4s because we got extra band 4 posts. What I would say though, for anybody considering putting automation in and offering your staff, your trust staff savings for your money savings, don't do it that way. You need those staff. We lost hundreds of years of experience by offering redundancy. And what we found was people just left within the first 18 months because it wasn't for them. They didn't want to do it. They retired. They went off to somewhere that was still like a manual lab. So offer your trusts long-term savings through natural wastage through people leaving, because you need that experience when you're setting up that new lab. Don't let them go. Keep a hold of them. And then just to whistle through what automation we've got in our lab at the minute. So we've got the Bactialert 3D for blood cultures, but we'll be changing to the Virtuos with our new procurement. We had 3 systems on each site, and basically we're just bolted them all together with one controller unit and off we went, and the poor thing's been running for about 15 years and it's still chugging along nicely. Consultants had concerns about turnaround times with we're going from different sites, and I actually stood up at a conference and challenged one of our consultants who was given a talk about lab consolidation and automation, and was it a good thing, and did we all really need to do it? Because he was insinuating that the blood culture turnaround times had worsened. Well, actually, we're doing way better because we changed to a 24/7 service. So they were actually getting a much better blood culture service because they were being processed all through the night. So no matter what time a blood culture flags, day or night, one of our scientists takes it off and follows the work through and brings it through to the wards. We regularly audit our blood cultures, so we carry out a monthly audit to check whether we're loading within 4 hours across the sites. So we've just dipped below 90%, which we're not happy about, for loading within 4 hours. And we also check the volume, so 71% of our blood cultures have greater than 8 mils of blood. So we've been increasing transport times between the other sites to try and make sure that the samples get to us as quickly as possible. As I've said, we're doing true 24/7 work, and our next steps with blood cultures is to evaluate and implement rapid ID using the bimarial primes, and also to look at rapid AST so that, again, the patient's given the right antibiotic and the right treatment. So the bimarial primes, these are new pieces of equipment into the lab. We've only just got them. We did have 2 Bruker MALDI-TOFs, but we implemented these in September 2023 as the most cost-effective when compared to Bruker. One of the things we liked about them is that you had a QC spot for each project, so you were ensuring that you quality for each project that goes on. And the carousels allowed loading of multiple projects. So with our Brukers, we would often find people were sitting in a line waiting to put projects on, whereas with this, everybody can set up their projects at their satellite workstations, and then they can bring their projects along, load them, and if they've got an urgent one, they can use the urgent function to get that put on. This is a tragic tale of the Vitek. So the Vitek 2, we had a Vitek 2 in Gateshead and we loved it. It was the best thing ever, and it was interfaced beautifully with WinPath. Then we all merged together and they couldn't get it to interface with Meditech, so we had to give it back. And that's why the sad face is there, because we were absolutely devastated because it was amazing. And we were only using it for yeast sensitivities, so it had to go back. But the good part of the story is it's coming back as part of 2024 procurement. We feel that UCAS rules have become so complex that we almost feel as if we're being pushed towards automation, and it will save one of my seniors who pulls her hair out every time the new guidelines, and it will save her about 6 months of her life having this sort of automation put in. It'll give us an extended panel of antibiotics, and like I said, it'll simplify the UCAS rules because you've got the Vitek expert rules, and I genuinely can't wait. They're being delivered next week for them to come back onto site, so it's really going to benefit the lab. PCR, I don't know about other lab managers or lab staff in here, how they felt about COVID. We just got thrown pieces of equipment. Some of them were absolutely useless, not fit for purpose at all. Some of them were brilliant. We were in a really lucky position that we already had quite a big PCR set up. So we had COBAS 6800s and 8800s because we have the North Yorkshire and Northeastern Yorkshire cervical screening programme. So we had a big PCR high throughput capacity, but we just couldn't get the kits from Roche. So basically we had to use every bit of PCR going. What we have now is the Cepheid Infinity, so we have a range of tests through the Cepheid Infinity. We have our COBASs, we have the BioFire, which is great, the paediatricians love. We've also done enteric PCR for probably about 8 years now, and that's brilliant for getting rapid enteric results through, and it helps with the infection control team when they're having to try and work out who to isolate in limited side rooms and bays. And we're also looking at introducing mycology PCR late into 2024 because everyone likes to get their toes out in the summer and we need good toenails, so get it done quicker. So what are our challenges going forward? So we've done a new procurement, we've awarded, and we now have to implement a new floor plan on top of the existing floor plan that we already have. We've got new equipment and processes to bring in. I need all of the staff to be engaged. We hopefully will have new IT interfaces that will work, but we also have to continue to provide the existing service with the provision that we've got and continue to improve the logistics. So that was the floor plan that I showed you. The orange bit was microbiology. We now have to fit microbiology into the red bit. Luckily, the lab was set up so that you could mirror the automation. So we're on to about version 1000 of the floor plan, trying to fit in the new WASP lab into that area. But we will do it, hopefully. So it is a logistical nightmare. How is it going to fit? Basically, we've took some benching out, and the lovely guys from Biomeria came with some gaffer tape and stuck it on the floors and said, this is how big your equipment's going to be. And then, as if by magic, 2 WASPs appeared a couple of weeks ago. So we're in the middle of validating those. But basically, we've got the same staff, the same sample numbers, a little bit less than the same amount of space, and we've still got to keep that service going. Basically, what all our staff have in their minds will have pictures of patients along the back wall, so from a baby all the way through to Mary, who, when Mary was put up, was 96 in 2012, so I'm not hopeful that Mary's still around. But basically, it's that people care for people, so this is what we try and instill into all of our staff. Every sample is a person, and they put their trust in us to do their work, and they don't choose when they're going to be ill. They never question any results that come from the laboratory, and they've got no ability to complain to the laboratory. And they wait and they worry about test results and what they mean, and they don't care how their test gets done. They don't care if I've got automation or whether I'm sitting in a field with a lamp. They don't care, but they trust us to get it right. And it's somebody's mother or brother or child, and we have to remember that you know, there's a patient at the end of every sample. So it's up to us to do our best for them, and just, there you go. That's automation. There you go. Whistle stop. I'm done.
Thank you. I really want to come and visit and have a look around. Sounds fantastic. Do we have any questions at all from the audience? Yep, Kate? Oh, sorry, you have to wait for the mic so they can hear you.
Automation. I've been to the Liverpool lab, and they have sort of, because you might end up automating with the Keystra and you've got the blood sciences, they rotate people round within blood sciences, and so they're not just sort of on one automated platform all the time. Have you taken on that kind of model?
Our staff are all microbiology based, so nobody rotates out of microbiology, but they do rotate around Keystra, serology, PCR, so they still get a range of sort of moving around the different parts of microbiology, but they don't go to other disciplines.
And what about just moving your microbiologists off site, and they could just look at all the agar plates through the
We have talked about remote work and whether we could do it. We've never been brave enough to take that step yet. But hopefully with the WASP lab, I think we'll be looking at reading that isn't in the actual lab.
Great, thank you.